Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Tonight we'll first take a look at some of the latest developments about the FBI's search of former President Trump's home. A federal district judge approved the search warrants just days ahead of the raid. Court records show the U.S. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart issued warrants last Friday. The White House today claimed it was not informed ahead of the raid. The FBI searched the Florida Mar-a-Lago resort on Monday. Trump was not in the state at the time. Trump's son, Eric Trump, told Fox News the raid was about documents.
The purpose of the raid, from what they said, was because the National Archives wanted to, corroborate whether or not Donald Trump had any documents in his possession.
Trump previously agreed to return certain records to the archives, calling it an ordinary and routine process. Trump supporters gathered outside Mar-a-Lago Monday night and Tuesday to decry the FBI's actions. Also today, a federal appeals court ruled that a House committee could obtain Trump's tax records, but Trump's lawyers could appeal this decision. Lawmakers and former government officials are weighing in. Former Vice President Mike Pence is expressing concern over the search. Pence posted on Twitter saying such actions undermine public confidence in the justice system, and Attorney General Garland must give a full accounting. Republican Senator Robert Marshall is also calling for an explanation from the FBI and the Justice Department.
The FBI were the good guys, and right now we're all concerned who the FBI really is. And then we see the IRS adding 87,000 new agents as well. They're going to be armed. They already have their guns, their ammunition. Folks back home are real concerned about what the federal government has become.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighed in saying, to have a visit like that, you need a warrant. To have a warrant, you need justification. And that says that no one is above the law, not even a president. Jeff Clark served in the Department of Justice during the Trump administration. Ironically, Clark recently had his home raided by DOJ officials pertaining to possible election fraud that took place in the 2020 election. Here to discuss yesterday's raid at Mar-a-Lago, we're happy to have with us Jeff Clark. Jeff Clark, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
Jeff, you were a high-ranking official in the Department of Justice. However, recently you yourself have been dragged into the DOJ's crosshairs. The Center for Renewing America, where you work, has called this a weaponization of government. With regard to what happened yesterday with the former president, if you could, help us understand from a legal standpoint if there is a precedent for this type of raid, and thus far does the speculation of probable cause justify what played out yesterday?
Well, we don't know what the probable cause is. That's one of the simplest ways to answer your question. I'll refer to my own case and say I still don't have a copy of the affidavit that was used to obtain the warrant for the search of my house. So it could be something that the president's lawyers need to do wrangling in order to get access to, but they should certainly try. And I think that a warrant needs to have that support and not just be part of a secret process. In terms of what the Justice Department is doing here with the president, I think it's entirely unprecedented. It's not to say that anyone in America is above the law, because you're certainly going to hear that as the repeated talking point from MSNBC and CNN. No one is above the law, therefore whatever they want to try to do to Trump is proper. But that totally ignores the memos of the Office of Legal Counsel, the historical precedent, and in particular to do this as is being reported based on issues about documents, when there have been so many document issues that prominent Democrats have had that have been totally swept under the rug. It just, it defies rational explanation to think that this is really something that is not explainable by pure politics.
Jeff, what do you think of the timing of this from a political standpoint, and could the president be disqualified from running again?
Well, that's clearly what the left is trying to say. I mean, within a very short time, you had Mark Elias, who is the leader and rabble-rouser of attempts, I think, to destroy the security of the American election system and just, have a wide-ranging system where there's only balloting by mail. I've even seen that the goal of the Center for Tech and Civic Life, which was the group that was supported by hundreds of millions of dollars in a giant infusion from Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, their ultimate goal is to get voting by text. Can you imagine what level of trust anyone could have in a magic box system where someone looks at the computer code and decides who's president? So they're saying, Mark Elias is saying that the document criminal statute here on point could result in President Trump being barred from future office. And I think it's clearly part of his plan. He'd been using an earlier plan of trying to use the 14th Amendment's provisions in order to bar folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn from holding federal office again. So this seems to be a general Democrat plan.
You mentioned trust, Jeff. If the administrative state is willing to go this far, I think a lot of Americans are asking the question, saying it only takes a matter of slipping one document into the treasure trove that was hauled away yesterday to turn this into a major criminal incident. From your perspective, was the way that the raid played out yesterday above board from a process standpoint? And is this a concern you think the former president might have?
Well, I don't know exactly what the details are of the process, who answered the door when they were at the gate, having been at Mar-a-Lago, when the agents showed up. What documents did they present? How long did it take for them to be presented? Did they let them be reviewed before the agents were admitted, et cetera? So there's a lot of new information that has to come out about that before I could possibly assess that. But, I will say that the whole thing it is, because it's so historically unprecedented and because it seems to have shifted gears into this document issue, which, apparently there had been a visit to Mar-a-Lago about that months ago. Suddenly for them to show up with a warrant, where they were able to look at how any documents were being kept on site, et cetera, it just is mind-blowing to me. And it's the kind of thing that the independent federal judiciary should have been looking very hard about. But again, we have to see what the affidavit says. What did they say in order to get that warrant? And it's also, I think, highly suspicious that that's not already surfaced. If the FBI and the DOJ wanted to maintain full confidence in the system, then they would release that information so that the American people and educated lawyers around the country could study that document and decide for themselves whether there was the right cause here, the right level of legal basis in order to get this unprecedented warrant against former President Trump.
Jeff Clark, thank you.
Thank you.
New York City's mayor says illegal immigrants are overwhelming the city's systems, and they held a special hearing on the issue today. Texas's governor says he'll continue to send illegal aliens to other cities until the Biden administration secures the southern border. But the Biden administration just officially ended the Remain in Mexico policy. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with more.
The Department of Homeland Security has officially ended the Remain in Mexico policy, which previously allowed the Border Patrol to send immigrants to Mexico to await their court dates. In a twist, the DHS will now gradually allow several thousand migrants who are currently in Mexico into the U.S. to pursue their asylum claims. This as FEMA continues to spend millions to house illegal immigrants across the country. Andrew Arthur, resident at the D.C.-based Center for Immigration Studies, points out that FEMA is an organization specifically designed to handle disasters.
FEMA is the DHS organization that is dedicated to responding to disasters. It's high time that the Biden administration actually admit that its policies had led to a disaster at the southwest border.
But the situation is now spilling over into cities far from the border, prompting the New York City Council today to hold a special hearing on how to handle the recent influx of migrants, who Mayor Eric Adams has said is overwhelming the system.
Predominantly young men from Venezuela.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has sent around 70 illegal immigrants to New York City and more than 6,000 to Washington, D.C. And he says he will continue to do so until, quote, Biden does his constitutional duty and secures our border. Adams today responding,
I am deeply contemplating taking a busload of New Yorkers to go to Texas and do some good old-fashioned door knocking.
The mayor and others often refer to the illegal immigrants as asylum seekers, which Arthur tells NTD is a mischaracterization.
Many, if not most of them, don't actually have valid asylum claims, are not going to be eligible for. Most of these individuals, most of the 1.129 million who have been released into the United States, are going to enter into that immigration court system, and by the time the full impact is felt, there are only about 600 immigration judges handling 2 million cases. Will create an unbearable burden. The entire system is going to break down.
Does this slow down the asylum process for those who actually would, in fact, be eligible for asylum?
Yeah, and that's a key point that I think many people in the administration and most of the public doesn't get. There are individuals, aliens who are in the United States who are eligible for asylum, and they should be granted as quickly as possible. When I was an immigration judge, I heard a lot of asylum claims from nationals of the People's Republic of China who alleged that they had been persecuted because they were Christians. The applicant in the United States would allege that the Chinese government was putting pressure on their family back home because they knew that their loved one here was applying for asylum in the United States. That's a great example of the individuals that we want to get out of harm's way as quickly as possible. We want to bring those people to the United States. That's what this country is built on.
Reforming the asylum system is an immigration issue where both Republicans and Democrats have found common ground. A few bipartisan bills have been introduced to address this issue. However, congressional leadership has not yet taken it as a priority to get results. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
A long-awaited semiconductor bill becomes law today. What does it mean for the chip industry, and how could it impact your life? NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Signing into law a $280 billion semiconductor bill, President Biden vowing
that the future of the chip industry is going to be made in America.
The bill, formerly known as the Chips and Science Act, passed the House and Senate last month with rare bipartisan support. And it came after more than a year of wrangling on the Hill and multiple versions of the legislation. The package includes more than $50 billion for chip manufacturing and research and development. And that, Biden says, will help the U.S. counter China, which has publicly opposed the legislation.
And China is trying to move away ahead of us and manufacture these sophisticated chips as well. It's no wonder the Chinese Communist Party actively lobbied U.S. business against this bill.
Other officials adding that chips, which are essential to cars and smartphones, are a matter of national security.
And our over-reliance on foreign manufacturers is a real vulnerability. But as has been said, that's going to change.
But critics from both sides of the aisle have blasted the bill as a corporate handout.
The fact that we're putting even more money, billions of dollars, into an economy which is already suffering from record high inflation.
And while Biden promises,
this law is not handing out blank checks to companies. Today, I'm ordering my administration to be laser focused on the guardrails that will protect taxpayers' dollars.
Others have expressed doubt about whether those measures would actually work.
These so-called guardrails would do nothing to prevent microchip companies from outsourcing the single job abroad. In fact, these so-called guardrails would not even force Intel to divest all of the money they have put into semiconductor companies in China.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.